A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, an interesting way that we might have a conversation over these coming minutes, because we're going to talk about bottom pinching and old photos. There's a very famous photo which has become significant, even iconic, about the end of the Second World War. It's an American photo, and it's been used in one of the pieces recently written by Bill Muehlenberg, and it's come under scrutiny, and it's even attracted anger from around the world. Well, let's talk about it. Bill Muehlenberg from Culture Watch is back with us. Hey, Bill, welcome back to 2020.
Great to be back.
Okay, Bill Muehlenberg, you're using photos that have come under scrutiny, and there are woke warriors who have you in their sights. Describe this photo for us.
Yep, can do. Most folks know all about it. In fact, if I may, two minor tweaks or corrections. It does show a photo of a sailor hugging and kissing a nurse, and there were no bottoms being pinched as far as I know. And yeah, there were a lot of people outraged, but it wasn't outraged at the photo. They were outraged because the Biden administration, or at least people in it, wanted to have it removed from all, in this case, Veterans Association rooms, hospitals, buildings, anywhere around. The Veterans Affairs, it seems, secretary had sent this memo saying this photo, right, the end of the Second World War, Japan had just surrendered, everybody was running out on the streets, out of their offices, out of their restaurants, famous picture of a sailor hugging and kissing a nurse in New York, streets of New York. So very famous, August 1945, right? A few months after Europe, Germany surrendered, the Japanese surrendered. What a time of celebration. So this is an iconic photo. And yet, here we have the VA department under Biden saying, no, this is unacceptable. This is clearly a case of some kind of sexual assault. She didn't ask permission for this to happen. So obviously this is just unacceptable. So we will no longer show this anywhere in any of our offices. So it was people learning about that stupid decision. That's when the outcry really took over. I mean, within hours, hundreds of thousands were on the social media saying, what is wrong with this country? What is wrong with Biden and his crew? So anyways, there was a very quick backtrack, very quick flip. And the head of the VA had to come out and say, oh, no, we got no plans to remove this thing. It'll stay, if it's in your office, you can keep it there. So another example of the cancel culture at its best or worst. In this case, very famous picture about the end of the war and the celebration and what you and I all have to face in this woke culture where you have to be careful about everything, what you do and what you say.
So it's a picture of a sailor and a nurse, and thank you for that little correction, because as I'm looking at the photo a little more carefully now, and listeners might want to go onto your site to see the photo, but it's the way that the nurse's arm is positioned. Yeah. That looks like a pinch to the bottom. It's actually not his arm, but that's right. he and she are in an embrace, and they are kissing, and they don't know each other. But it's the jubilation of the end of the war. People are on the streets. And this sort of thing used to happen a whole lot more frequently until just recently. I remember there was that incident with the soccer coach and the player, and he planted one on her and then was even dismissed from his role, as I understand it. So this is becoming a whole lot more a big issue because the issue of consent is involved. What are your thoughts around that word, Bill, and the way it's morphed and changed in the way we think about it?
Well, I can be quite certain that back in 1945, neither her nor him nor anybody were using the word consensual when they saw this. Everybody would have been saying, praise God, we won the war. And that's actually what the sailor had said. We were so grateful. And he did mention in his time of service overseas, right, he saw many nurses well, treating the wounded, tending to the sick. So, he thought this was especially, thank God for nurses, although in this case, mind you, the gal had turned out to be a dental assistant. She looked like a nurse and could have been. And actually, her parents were from Austria, Jewish background, and she at the time didn't know where her mother and father were in Europe. But yeah, the whole point was he was elated. She was, taken by surprise. And sure, we got the Me Too movement. Is there sexual assault? Is there rape? Is there men taking advantage of women? Oh, sure, happens all the time. And in that sense, times are changing. We want to be a bit more careful, right? I'm not going to walk down Collins Street in Melbourne and, if there's some good news, grab the first gal I see, give her a kiss. I'd probably get arrested and thrown in jail if I did that. But back then, right, just a normal outpouring of elation, joy, the end of the war after all, so many people gave their lives. So nobody saw it as an assault of any kind, a sexual assault. And in fact, if you look at my version of that picture on my website, you'll see it signed by both of them, right? Years later, they finally learned that this picture was out there. I think there was a U.S. Congress devoted a session just to that picture. So they were both there. They both said, look, it was harmless fun. There was no problems here. I understood him to be celebrating the end of the war, she said. And obviously, if she did think it was some kind of horrible assault on her person, right, I don't think she'd be signing the photo with him. She'd probably be pressing charges, right, getting him sent to jail. But, she had none of that in her mind. But of course, our woke culture, they do. It's in their mind everywhere. If you look at a rabbit the wrong way, you're going to be guilty of something, right? We have to watch what we do, what we say, even what we think, and that's where the whole woke agenda is taking us. So if you're going to ban an iconic photo like this, well, what's next?
Well, often people will have Christian values in their sights, and the thought that somehow or other Christians are really, really tough and strong on these sorts of values. It's interesting that we might be looking at this photo and defending it because we're looking at a photo that is an historic, iconic photo, and the values of that day were a little different. Today's woke values, though, Bill, being transposed onto an earlier time, this seems to be one of the ways that a woke community likes to flex their muscles by looking at those things of the past and transposing their values onto those issues. Any thoughts around what makes those woke values powerful in the way that people are stirring up people's sentiments today?
Yeah, well, two thoughts. Obviously, one, we see the rewriting of history. I mean, that's the whole agenda of the left, is to rewrite history. In fact, to cancel history out. They wanted to get rid of this picture, saying it's wrong, it's evil, it's sexist, we cannot allow this to happen. So had that gone through, at least in those VA buildings and so on, people would not even know. And if you keep pushing it further, as in 1984 by Orwell, everything is rewritten. All history is changed. And when people forget their history, they're left hanging for whatever the tyrants of the day want to push. Now, as to values, again, as I say clearly in my piece, look, something like rape, is that wrong? All times, all places, all cultures? Absolutely. Nobody is saying rape is okay. But nobody's, not least of which the guy and the gal in this photo, said a word about rape. They didn't see it as sexual assault. They didn't see it as, a non-consensual agreement. Again, the word wouldn't even have been used. So you're right. We're taking our current values, some of which are not necessarily good values. They're just woke agenda items, and transposing them onto the past and judging everything in the past by these current woke values, right? So it'd be a million things, actors or celebrities who, 30 years ago had a blackface thing on, right? A white guy put a bit of black makeup on to, for whatever reason, do a role in a film or TV. nobody batted an eyelash. Nobody thought it was wrong. But now with our hypersensitivities about not just sexism, but racism, right? We go back now and we try to find those people from 30 years ago and we try to crucify them. We say, this is terrible. Why did you do this? Of course, the funny thing is not getting the inconsistency here, right? We could do a whole segment on this. We don't like guys dressing up if they're white as black people. But it's quite all right if you're a guy to dress up as a woman and pretend you're a woman, right? So we got woman face, like black face. The one is wrong, the other is fine. So, the left is all over the place as always. But yeah, when you take values today that are not necessarily traditional mainstream values, but just the latest woke agenda items and transpose those onto what happened in the past, it's foolish, and it can be quite harmful to those, including this couple here. They both passed away now. But even their children who are still alive have spoken out against this kind of foolishness that the woke activists are doing.
And it's not that long ago, Bill, that in places like the Gold Coast, when the New Year's time would click over into a new year and the police on the streets of the Gold Coast would be attracting a whole lot of young women who would want to kiss them. I'm talking about women kissing male police. Now, that's been outlawed and, there might be some issues around that. And this idea, though, that planting a kiss in public with two strangers in mind, being seen, and you've got to read between the lines here, but being seen as a sexual act, kissing, most of us would have said, a kiss is not so much the dreaded sinfulness of how a relationship might develop, but it's just a way of expressing an emotion. Any thoughts here on how kissing has become something of a woke agenda?
Yeah. Well, again, a lot of it's cultural, right? If you live in Europe, if you find yourself being introduced to a complete European stranger, right, often they'll grab you, kiss you on not one, but both cheeks, right? Both sides of the face. It's just a cultural practice. Is there any sexual intent? Was it non-consensual and worthy of a crime? No. Well, look, even Paul, right, could talk about give one another a holy kiss. So obviously, depends on the context, depends on the setting. But my point in my piece was, just about everything we do and say now and think, the woke police are out to get you. You got to watch everything. You cannot say the wrong word, look the wrong way, think the wrong thought, or the thought police will go after you. And if they get their way, they'll lock you up. Again, had this happened today, this guy would probably now be in a jail cell, right? And the angry mob would be saying, this guy should be locked up and throw the key away. So partly times change, but partly woke agendas can have a way of just messing with everything and making things worse and not better.
Well, Bill, you've successfully raised the ire of the Biden administration in the US, and one of your articles, no doubt, is much more viral than ever before. So there might be a silver lining on a dark cloud here for you, but it does raise a really important issue about how sensitive people are today with a woke agenda, and also, by necessity, how careful every one of us must be so far as our own behaviours towards one another, always considering others and their own autonomy. Let me point listeners to this latest article that you've written. It's called Woeful Woke Wonders Weakening the West. Woeful Woke Wonders Weakening the West. You'll be able to find it at billmuehlenberg.com, and you can simply Google Culture Watch and you'll see it there. Bill, thanks so much for another great update today on 2020.
Thanks, Neil. And if I were with you, I'd give you a hug, maybe even a friendly kiss, but we're not together that way.
I might say I'm pleased about that, Bill.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.